Welcome, everybody. Joe Tarnowski with ECRM, and I have with me today Dorsey Sparks, who's the president of Betterment Retail Solutions, which is a health and wellness distributor and broker. They kind of sit right in between the retailers and the suppliers. They have a big focus on CBD, and in fact, they do work with a lot of ECRM's customers on both sides of the fence. In fact, we recently just posted a story, a case study on some of the work they did with Yesway and a couple of CBD brands. So, Dorsey, thank you so much for joining us. And to start off, can you give us an overview of the company and some of the services that you guys provide?
Sure, Joe. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and very happy to talk to you today. We were founded in September of 2018, and there was almost immediately an interest by retailers in the CBD space. So of course, that was a big year for CBD. And so we were founded as a health and wellness distribution company. And due to the extraordinary interest by retailers in the CBD category, we set out to become experts on the subject, and we did. And so as our business has evolved over the last 2.5 years, we have responded to the needs that we see in the marketplace for services for retailers. They need help. They are inundated with samples and emails and calls from multiple brands, right? And so we help sort and focus their attention on the products that we think are the very best fit for their retail space and their customer base. And then for suppliers, we found that we were able, the vice president of the company and co-founder, Tony Sparks, has 25 plus years in C-stores. And so we're able to leverage his industry knowledge to help suppliers with how they present their programs and develop their programs and use their trade spend to support their products. So
That's great. I think that, there definitely was a need. We kind of really got into the CBD game around the same time. I think we launched our first kind of a CBD summit in 2017, I think the second half of 2017. And then we had our first session in 2018. It just blew up. But just like you said, there is so much confusion in the space. People didn't know how to vet some of these suppliers. They didn't know what's the best way to merchandise. And we're talking specifically like the mass retail, like the Yesways, where they're just getting into the CBD game versus the CBD stores or the natural or independent retailers. It's a different ball field when you're dealing with the mass retailers. So there definitely is a need to have someone in that space in the middle to kind of give them direction and educate them. And so since you guys work on a bunch of different things, you do the distribution, you do the sourcing, you do the education, could you take us through each of those? Like on the sourcing, how do you work with the retailers to kind of find the appropriate products? And then after that, maybe a little bit about the training that you do with them on the executive and the store level?
Sure. So with our vetting process, we're working to not only obviously deeply vet the present and ongoing quality of the hemp extract, the manufacturing process, the final product, packaging. We want to ensure they're not making any claims. We want to ensure that they are following all the best practices in any packaged good manufacturing process, in addition to every industry standard known to man, right, in the hemp derivative space. And so we're looking for consistent consistent results on COAs. We're looking for QR codes. We're looking, tied to a specific batch and lot number. And we try to help both the supplier and the retailer understand the importance of being able to hit those marks at the very highest standard. So certainly our vetting process for both the CBD component and the manufacturing component, we're very proud of. We think it's the best and most thoughtful in the industry. And then we have, in addition to that, we have a very deep understanding of the integrity of the leadership team and of the scalability of the product. And so what that allows us to do is to really create some good matches for our products and our retailers. So we may have, for example, a supplier who's got this phenomenal product, right? And we have a retailer that we say, gosh, okay, maybe they're not ready to produce enough product to go nationwide, but it's a great fit here. Or we may have a retailer who has specific requirements like, we're only comfortable with 0 THC. Okay, so we can help them match the right brand, the right product offering to the needs of the company. And then once we've sorted through what we think are great products, and as part of that process, we really emphasize the education at every level. And so very often that starts with educating the executive team. They've heard of CBD, they know there's some potential there. And so they're really curious to know very often from the ground up, what is this category about? What's the opportunity? What are the liabilities that they have to consider? How does it get disseminated to stores? How do we treat it as a category, and so on and so forth? And so we typically start with the executive team and help them understand both the opportunity and the legal aspect of CBD and provide some education around that. And then we just start taking it down the line, and we want to educate regional managers over multiple stores about what they can expect to see and what questions they might expect to answer from their store managers and store associates. And then because we are DSD, we don't just drop the product off at the back door. We're in there setting up displays, merchandising it, and we are really boots on the ground, which has been invaluable to us because we're interacting with store associates. Daily. We know the questions that they have. We know what customers are requesting. We know what questions customers have. And so we have frequent opportunities to educate store associates and to respond to what's happening in the stores from the customers, what their questions are, and what they're asking for.
Cool. And I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. But before I do, on the retail side, who are your typical types of retailers? Are you primarily working with mass retailers?
So we're very focused right now on the C-store channel of trade.
Gotcha.
We're very focused on the C-store channel of trade. We have some very exciting plans and opportunities in 2021, and I expect we'll be expanding our channels of trade significantly. But currently, we're very focused on C-store, and that is our expertise.
Great. And so now that gets me back to the training part. What's unique about C-stores or any mass retail, but especially free C-stores, is, the CBD sale is more of a consultative sale, but then you're dealing with a fast-moving environment, where it's all about turnover. How do you kind of balance that?
It is super critical to have CBD in the right location in the store. It's super critical to have crystal clear and consistent signage around it, because we always say don't give the customer a homework assignment, right? Where they're walking in, and okay, so here's here's what I think is most important. Is to really put yourself in the shoes of the customer. When they walk in, number one, they're probably in a hurry, right? On the way to school, on the way to a lesson, on the way to work, and they just have a minute to pop in and pop out. They might be getting gas, maybe not. And they're walking in, they already have a specific purchase in mind. They're not going in to wander the aisles of a superstore, right? They have a specific purchase in mind. They're going for an energy drink or a soda or a pack of cigarettes or a sandwich from the cold case. So they have a specific purchase in mind. And so with CBD, not only do you have to pivot them from their intended purchase, you have to make it possible for them to make a decision in a split second. And so the signage, the packaging, the location, all of that has to be factored in to how do you get them to pivot from their original intention to making the CBD purchase.
So as much messaging up front as you can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the example I use all the time is for the vast majority of consumers, this still is a really new product. And so if you walk in looking for a specific candy bar and you see a bigger size or a different flavor or something on sale, as a consumer, you immediately understand what's happening there. Oh, it's a chocolate bar with this other ingredient added. But with CBD, it's all brand new. And there are a lot of questions around it. And maybe they've heard of it, maybe they're interested. But there's really a lot of education that has to take place almost instantly in the packaging, in the messaging. And there are so many things to understand about it, right? How many milligrams and what's a good value and who's a good brand. And that's why I think we're seeing such tremendous success as we get more what we at Betterment call Gen 2 items, which is beverages, packaged snacks, smokables, things like that, because now these are products that people get, right? When they see a tincture, if they're not in that health food set already, that's very unfamiliar territory. You know, what do I do with it? Do I drop it under my tongue? If I read the box label, do I put it on something? How much? So that's new territory. And when they see a CBD beverage or a CBD chocolate bar, or I think that also explains some of the popularity of the gummies. There are so many gummies in other products right now. They're like, I get it. I understand what this is. And so
that's a good point. Especially when you're talking about new CBD consumers. So if you had people who have been big believers in CBD for years, they've done the research, they know what's going on, they know all that stuff, but you have someone walking in who's maybe curious and has no experience, they will relate more to a beverage, a functional beverage concept or a snack or something like that, as opposed to a tincture. And then, if they see, I know if they're not that familiar with CBD and they see the smokable CBD in a jar, it looks like weed. So it's different. They don't realize, you can smoke this and it has nothing to do with getting you high. It's all about CBD.
Yeah, we've the hemp cigarettes have been a smashing success that we found, again, because they're not intimidating. It's a form that people understand. It doesn't look like, what you tried to hide from your parents in high school, right? It looks like an acceptable consumer product. And so it alleviates a lot of those, just the familiarity of it alleviates a lot of those concerns for a lot of consumers. Some people might see that jar and think like, oh, cool. But a lot of people see that jar and that is not the reaction. They have some misgivings and concerns, and, they don't want to put it in their purse and then their kids see it and, they feel like they have some explaining to do. So,
yeah, unless it's California, one of the recreational states, then it's a little more common. But now for those customers who actually do have questions, how are you training the store associates to handle them?
So we've done training calls with regional managers and store managers where we go through the most basic information about what CBD is, what are the laws around it, how's it used in products, what are answers to common questions about how many milligrams and all of that. We advise them not to tell customers that it will take care of this health issue. It'll take care of this health issue. And then we also we have rack cards at the point of sale with CBD FAQs, where we find those to be very useful both for the store associates and for the customers, and they heavily rely on those. And so instead of, in that very super fast-paced environment, instead of having to take time to stop and have a conversation, they can hand them the information card, customer can pick it up, and store associates have used it to educate themselves as well.
Great. So again, it focuses on that speed of information where it's needed most, right there in the store. So now you also do the merchandising and display, since you're handling the DSD. What kind of things have you done with your customers? Like, how have they varied by types of store, types of customers? Does that impact the type and a style of displays you might use?
Well, for sure. And so we've had Yesway and Kwik was our first CBD retailer. They're extremely progressive in this category. They're extremely forward-looking in this category, and so it's been a great partnership for us, and we have learned a lot together from the very first rollout in stores. We started with waters, with CBD water on a floor display, and we were like, let's just see how it goes. And the response was tremendous. And so from that point, we introduced a multi-vendor counter display with a variety of items like chocolate and honey sticks and gummies and shots and things of that nature. And consistently, we have found that location is absolutely critical. It has to be very visible to customers, again, because if they're not walking in intending to purchase a CBD item, if they don't see it, there's nothing that's going to trigger that purchase. So they have to see it. It has to be visible. So location is super critical. Of course, every conversation, I think, with every supplier, CBD or not, starts with, and I've got this little display that's perfect for right beside the register.
Of course, yeah.
So that's a coveted space. But with this particular category, whether it's right by the register or in some other standout location, we just find that it's absolutely critical that the customer see it. Otherwise, in most cases, unless they're a regular customer, they're not going to, nothing is going to trigger the purchase. They're not going to think, I wonder if they have CBD in the store, and I wonder what products they have in CBD. So location, can't say it enough times, true in real estate, true here. Yeah. Location is super critical. They have to see it, and then it has to be, appealing, high quality, and they need to be able to see at a glance and understand what the product offering is. And so that's why we believe Gen 2 is definitely the future, especially in C-store, because these are familiar products that consumers understand, and importantly, they're at a price point that consumers are willing to spend to try CBD. It's tough for someone who's maybe interested in CBD to experiment within a very high dollar, full size bottle of product, right? But most people are willing to spend $5 on a product to try CBD. And then, once they begin to understand how they respond to it, then they're more willing to buy more of that product or larger sizes. So
it's an easy way for them to get into the category and start some trial going on. and then get them deeper into it as they get happy with these products. So the next, actually that's a good segue for the next question, which is based on what you've been seeing with the retailers you work with. I know it's primarily C-store, so these trends may not be exactly the same in drug or mass, but what trends have you seen? I mean, the good thing about what you're doing with C-stores and the fact that they carry the whole range, whether it's health and, skincare or topicals and gummies and edibles as far as beverages. So you get to see out of all of those where the trends are. So what have you been seeing as far as consumer interest over the past year or so that you've been working?
So, there have been statistics thrown around quite a bit that we think are a little misleading in general, because you see huge numbers in topicals, and really we believe that, although that's certainly an important market segment, the reason you see such huge numbers is because that's what a lot of large retailers have been approved by their legal departments to put in stores, right? And so the reason everybody's buying topicals is because that's what's in stores. And I don't think that paints the true picture. Same thing is true with tinctures. Of the people who are buying CBD, a lot of those early buyers are people who are very interested, educated, and motivated for some reason in the health and wellness space. And that doesn't tell the story of every shopper. And so I think there is a vast market out there for packaged beverage, for packaged goods, for items that are familiar to consumers. The taste is familiar, the flavor profile is familiar, the use is familiar. They understand immediately what to do with a bottle of water. You don't have to read package directions, right? Yeah. And so we think that is what most people are looking for. They don't want to do a homework assignment. They don't want to do research. They want a great tasting product that works well for them.
And I think I agree with you on that. It's easy to consume. You know what it is. You know how to do it. It's not like, okay, I've never done a dropper before. How do I do this? And even though tinctures are incredibly popular, but like you said, among newer consumers or people who may not be as educated on it, they're going to go with what's familiar. And I know that, the regulations don't support it going into a lot of mass retail places yet, beverages and edibles. But once it does, I can see it really exploding because of that fact.
Right. And that's what we've found, what we're beginning to see over the long term is that as customers have, they try the water and then they get interested and try the gummies and they start trying some other things. They begin to get more educated and get a better understanding of the product. And then they start looking for and asking store associates for, well, what else do you have? Or they begin to get interested in the tincture. And over time, we've seen, because we do have a tincture in the set, we've seen sales of that pick up because they start to understand the advantages of the tincture. And so we think those familiar products are a great introduction to CBD. And then over time, it takes those consumers to more traditional CBD products, right? Because they begin to understand the value of the concentrated form of it and how it gives them, I can use a little bit when I need it, a lot when I need it. I can take it directly. So they begin to understand the value of that. And so we think the familiar products help introduce them and set them up for sales in the Gen 1 space.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense from a shopper journey perspective. They're new, they come in, they'll try something that's familiar. As they see, as they start liking it or liking the effects, they get more educated themselves. They start doing their own research and then they learn about these and get in. So they go from the Gen 2 to the Gen 1 over time. And because I remember when I went to Planet 13 in Vegas, that huge dispensary, and they have both. They have both marijuana, THC products, and CBD. But when I was just picking the brain of the bud tender there, and it's cool the way the setup is because there's no lines. You have a number, you enter your name in a system, and then they'll put your name on the board, and then they tell you where to go, what register to go, and you have their time. So I just barraged them with
Oh, that's
questions.
awesome. That's great.
And and his real consultative approach over there. And he said the tinctures was still really, really big there, but most of their shoppers, kind of aside from the people going there just for the novelty of it, most of their shoppers were educated. They knew what they wanted. They knew what the use cases they wanted and what they, what they were looking for. But mass retail is a different animal. You're dealing with new consumers that don't know anything about it or may not know anything about it. That's really cool. So, and shopping trends, just as far as how the shoppers are buying. Are they buying in bulk? Are they just trying one at a time? Do they, how has COVID kind of impacted the way they're shopping the store for CBD?
I think again, it's the COVID has definitely generated interest in people taking better care of their health, right? And
Without a doubt,
your immune system for sure. But I think that the shopping trend overall is that people who are accessing these products in C stores, they're smaller, more frequent purchases, just like their other C store items, right? If you're going to be 2 or 3 times a week, if I stop on the way to every gymnastics class or baseball practice, then I know that I'll grab a couple of bottles of water or I'll buy a bag of gummies, and that's going to last me until the next time that I come in. And so I think we see those smaller, more frequent purchases. And we have a lot of consumers who, once they try it, those are the customers who are buying over and over again. And so part of our push in 2021 is to expand the program to really drive new customer trial. And we think it's just going to explode. We're just super excited for what this year is going to bring, because we think, again, there's just a vast opportunity out there to bring in new consumers who haven't tried it yet.
Do you see a lot of customers bouncing around? Like you mentioned, you have a bunch of different types of products. Do you see them trying a bunch of different ones, like on subsequent trips?
To some extent, most people like what they like. If they're energy shot people, they like to buy the energy shots. And from time to time, they'll try something else, but they have that core product, just like with the other categories.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. I'm the same way. I have my products that I like, and I'm pretty loyal to those products. So, recommendations, because you've been doing this for the past couple of years, working so closely with the buyers and with the suppliers, what are some of your recommendations or best practices for, let's start with retailers, right, that are considering getting into the CBD game? What should they look into or do first?
Well, so here's what we've seen in the retail space is that the way we've seen it play out over the last 2 years is that early on, because buyers, whoever won the CBD lottery, right, was tasked with understanding and introducing this, what I believe is actually a complex category because it's new in every way, right? It's new in legal, it's new to the consumers, it's new to the store. Where do you put it? And so these buyers were given the CBD category and said, hey, guess what? This is added on to everything else that you're doing now. And so it was an extraordinarily huge undertaking for them. And once their name got out there, as I mentioned earlier, they were so inundated. I mean, some of these category managers have literal mountains, pyramids of samples behind and around their desk, and they're getting emails and phone calls and, please let me tell you why mine is the CBD miracle you've been waiting for. And it's catapult your sales to, and all of this. And so, how do you know who to believe? How do you know which product to put in? And so the turnkey programs that were available alleviated that pressure for buyers. And so they were very popular early on, and they were going into stores at a time when there was so much buzz around CBD. And so there was a lot of initial excitement around it when it first went into stores, and it seemed to be a great success. When that excitement around the new product leveled out, things began to happen. For example, as we see all the time, one of the real advantages of DSDs that were in the stores, those displays tend to get moved to a less noticeable location over time, right? And many of them were locked up. And so not only did you have to find the display, but you have to ask somebody to get it for you. And then if it's out of the way, they have to walk over. And so from the retailer's perspective, what we saw happening was these buyers, with an overwhelming task, they take on a turnkey program, there's some initial success, and then maybe some of that success levels out, shall we say, and it lessens their enthusiasm for the category. And so my recommendation to retailers and to retailers who are starting out in this space is definitely to treat it as a new category. You can't just put CBD in the store the way it happened in the beginning and it's a big success. It really has to be developed. So it needs the proper location. And I can't recommend enough the multi-vendor approach, because, in the same way that you don't go to the vault door and see just one brand of beverage, right? You have a wide offering to meet a wide variety of tastes and needs. Same thing here. You really need a selection. Of course, that makes the process more complicated, but here we are, BettermentRS. What we do.
And what's interesting, I think you guys probably help a problem, or one challenge is that, like you mentioned, when you said whoever's wins the lottery and becomes a lot of cases. Initially, that buyer or category manager, when they're given the CBD, it's all these other categories in addition to what they're normally focused on. So managing that's got to be tough, because you're not going to spread it out among all these different, some maybe do that, but what I've seen is it starts with one, and then it'll branch out into other areas, like let's say the GM category manager for pet. And but still, it usually starts off with somebody on the HBC or wellness side, and then kind of goes out from there. So it's got to be a big task for anybody taking it on right at the beginning, and it's in terms of vetting everybody.
Yeah, vetting everybody and product selections. And there's not, it's so new, there's not a ton of industry data out there to help guide them in, what do you start with? What are people looking for? When you start looking for that data, you see, topicals. Yeah. Okay, well, let's put in topicals. And then, they don't see the turn that they were hoping for on that. And so it really is a challenge in the beginning if you don't have experience in the space to figure out how to approach it. And so that's what we found. Multi-vendor approach. People love familiar products. They'll choose something delicious and familiar over over a skin cream in a C-store most often.
Gotcha. And what about messaging? Obviously, like you mentioned before, you're a big fan of getting as much messaging as possible. Are you also including social media, digital? What's the combination of messaging that you're trying to hit the consumers with before and while they're in the store?
Every opportunity, this is going to require, for this to become a common consumer product, it's going to require massive consumer education and trial. And so, yeah, social media and promotions that drive consumer trial, everything that we can do to educate the consumer on what CBD is, where it is, and get them to try it for the first time it's gonna raise all the ships in the harbor, right, for the whole category. Yeah.
Yep. And on the supplier side, if they're looking to get into mass retail or C-store, well, how do you recommend they approach it? I mean, we've seen a lot of suppliers at our sessions. You've been to our sessions, so you meet with all these suppliers. And, you know, from one thing I've heard, which relates to something you talked about before, is in the beginning, everybody was coming out with, oh, we're the first at this, or we're the best at this. But you have 100 people saying, we're the best at this, or we're the first at this to the same buyer. And they start, you know, they're not going to believe anybody after a while when they say that. So what is your recommendation for how these CBD suppliers should start approaching the mass retail market or the C-store market?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think that, you know, first of all, the understanding that whatever your product category is, you know, we get samples all the time. And the truth is there are a lot of great products out there, like genuinely high quality products with delicious taste and all the right check marks as far as the product itself is concerned. And so to go in with the understanding that, yes, you may have a fantastic product, but a lot of other people do too. So now you start to look at it, okay, well then how do I differentiate myself? And you do that by how are you going to make it crystal clear? How are you going to promote your product when it's in that retailer's space and in their shelf? How are you going to make it successful for them? So what kind of marketing program do you have? What kind of trade spend can you offer, if any? And then what kind of margins can you offer that retailer? Those are ways to differentiate yourself. Just assume that whatever great, fantastic product you have, other people have a great, fantastic product in the same category. And then the other thing that we're seeing, a trend that we're seeing, is that companies who are looking to really compete in the space are bringing prices down closer to their non-CBD counterpoints. And that's driving a lot of sales because it's a very different mindset when somebody goes into a specialty health grocery store looking for a product and when somebody goes into a C store. And so asking somebody to pay significantly more for a product that they possibly haven't tried yet when they didn't even go in looking to purchase it in the first place, that's a pretty big ask. And so you've either got to have a compelling offer behind it or a reasonable price. Something has to drive that decision, right, for the consumer to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to spend a little more. So great marketing behind it to support sales and to drive trial. Great margins for the retailer. And then, you know, I mean, it hurts on the supplier side, but the truth is the closer we can get those prices to the non-CBD counterpart, the more successful the product is going to be.
Excellent. And those are great recommendations. I know, so I'm assuming these are some of the things that you were looking for when you had meetings with brands at our CBD sessions that you participated in.
Yeah, for sure. And that's and we found, you know, by the way, I told you we found 2 of our beverages at ECRM, but at an earlier ECRM, I recalled we found one of the suppliers that we work with very closely, a tribe at ECRM. Okay. And that Excellent. So we look for the quality, we look for really once we've checked all the boxes on quality of product and manufacturing processes, then we start looking for does the packaging prominently display CBD? Mm-hmm. Because if it doesn't, if it doesn't, it's difficult to get a consumer to say, oh, CBD, I've been hearing about that. So we recommend that the packaging prominently call out CBD. I think some suppliers were trying to stay away from that for a while to make it maybe more friendly for more ambiguous markets, right? Where the retailers weren't confident that they could sell CBD. And so they were trying to make it a little more casual, a little more under the radar. But we've found it's important for the packaging to prominently call out CBD or hemp for sure.
Excellent. So, and last question was just, and this is just more, from my curiosity, is your experience at the ECRM sessions and that format, and how has that helped you as a buyer source in your sourcing and vetting efforts?
Well, so, as we had talked about, or as I said previously, it's when you're at that show, I mean, certainly there is a lot to take in, right? There's a lot to take in, and because I'm an over talker, and so it's very, I'm always getting escorted to the next session, right? I never make it on my own.
Oh, you're one of those. You're one of those where we
shoulder, yeah. So, but when you go through these sessions, particularly when you're focused on a category, because you're seeing so many back-to-back, the differentiators really stand out more so than when you look at them over time. And so you start to notice thoughtful product formulations, right? You notice packaging. You notice what type of marketing they're able to talk about that they do to support sales of their brand, what kind of partnerships they're willing to do. And so all the things that make a brand successful, when you're looking at so many in one category in a short period of time, those who have the particular characteristics that you're looking for, they really stand out. And then afterwards, for me, since I do so much on paper, when I really need to process it, I go through and I take notes in my ECRM book, right? And that's what I go back to afterwards, like who had the milligrams, who had the added functional ingredients, who had the, so for me, it's a great way to very efficiently compare all of these brands and come away with, these are clearly going to be a good fit for us and what we're trying to do for the next year.
Great. You know what? That's the first time I've heard someone put it in that perspective. And that really is really makes so much sense. I mean, seeing them one after another, you really get to see how they differentiate from one another and look at the big picture kind of in a couple of days. So, well, once you start coming to our virtual sessions, there won't be any knock. The next meeting just happens, but we do give you a 2-minute warning. So,
So I have been a part of some of the virtual sessions.
Oh, you have been? Okay. What do you think of the virtual? What, especially since you've been to both in person and virtual, what do you think of the virtual platform in terms of, effectiveness, efficiency for what you're looking for?
Well, it definitely takes me to task on my focus, right? Because when it's over, it's over. There's no, when it's over, it's over. I think the most effective sessions were the sessions where the suppliers had sort of done their homework and they weren't showing us products that were not relevant to what our company is about, right? So they were able to narrow the focus of that particular session to, hey, I see you guys are heavily into the Gen 2 space. Let me show you what we have that works with that. And so I think preparation was far more critical. In person, you can walk up to the table and say, oh, I'm interested in this, this, and this, and then they can talk about that. Virtually, that's much harder to accomplish.
You know, that's a good point. So you suppliers out there who are watching this or listening to this, keep that in mind. We do, and that's why we actually provide them with all of the buyers' goals and objectives for the category and what products they're interested in, so that this way they can do their homework and get the most out of each meeting. So you suppliers out there, listen to that.
It was super noticeable who was giving the same presentation to everybody and who was, you know, who had taken a few minutes to say, hey, let's figure out what Betterment might be interested in.
Yeah, and we stress that all the time on both, and it goes both ways. The buyers who do their research of the suppliers ahead of time, they tend to have better meetings as well. So it's all about the prep work so that you make the most of that 10 or 20 minutes. So last question, what's next for Betterment?
Oh my God. It's how much time do we have left?
Take your time.
We're so excited for 2021. We're actually developing a very comprehensive program that we think is going to be beneficial in multiple retailers and multiple channels of trade. The big reveal is happening with our Yesway Allsup's planning session coming up this month. And so they get the sneak peek. And so and we'll introduce the program in their stores this year, and then we hope to expand. And so we're looking at expanded real estate in stores to better showcase the multiple categories, right? We're looking at more retailers, more channels of trade. We're looking at enhanced services as far as helping our retailers and our suppliers very efficiently manage. We're spearheading the effort in this space on scan-based trade, and that is definitely a learning for suppliers and how to make that opportunity profitable and scalable, so that instead of a burden, it becomes a fantastic way to open doors, right, with retailers, and it becomes a way to maximize sales, maximize every opportunity, because you get so much data back from it. It's an extraordinary opportunity. And we think that it's going to really come to fruition in 2021. And it's going to be, the benefits to the retailer are obvious, right? In scan-based trade, because the supplier owns the inventory. But we strongly believe that properly managed, it is a huge opportunity for suppliers as well, both because it's opening doors into retail spaces that they might not otherwise have had an opportunity to get their products in. And the amount of data that they get back from it is huge. And the relationship that it creates with retailers is extraordinary, because the retailer knows 100% that supplier is giving them product that is going to move in their stores, right? So we all win. We're all on the same team with scan-based.
That's what you want. That's a true partnership.
Yeah. So we think that's going to develop very nicely in 2021 as well.
Cool. Well, you keep us up to date on that, and we will make sure to keep our audience up to date on that. And Dorsey, thank you so much. This is very informative. And
it's been an hour. I overtalked. So
see, I told you it's fine with me. I want to go as long as you need. And we will, we'll keep everybody posted on any new updates. And I look forward to seeing you at our future sessions.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.